Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff special live edition. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. It is Friday, March 25th, 2022. And yeah, here we are. I mean, we're at the end of the basketball season. We're in spring practice. Plenty of draft talk. Ohio State celebrating a couple of national championships. Congratulations to the women's hockey team for all their great work this season. I believe Pistol won a national championship. So there's a lot going on. The Ohio State women's basketball team plays tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, up in the Pacific Northwest against Texas in the Sweet 16. A lot going on. I'm going to give some people an opportunity to get on board on the show before we really get into the topics. We may go 30 minutes, we may go an hour, we may go an hour and a half. We'll see. You all really excuse me, you all dictate the show. I come in with a rough idea of what I kind of want to talk about, but you guys generate most of the target or most of the topics. Hey, Ryan, good to see you as well. You guys dictate most of what we talk about here. I mean, obviously, I can't talk about the price of gas, things like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm just a dumb sports writer, but whatever I can talk to you about, I will. Here we go. Looking for the live show at Taco Mac this spring. And there you go. Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, Taco Mac, fantastic little chain down in Georgia. I think it's beyond Georgia too. Have a couple of really great Buckeye friends that like to go to Taco Mac. I like Taco Mac because they have an extensive beer menu. We could talk for a while about beer, but I talked about beer last night and woke up feeling a little blurry. But good food, solid wings, always great company. So yes, Taco Mac, not a sponsor of the Big Me Kickoff, but if you're watching, call me. I love you, Taco Mac. Yeah, absolutely. I enjoy doing these live shows. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's easier than doing the other pre-taped show, because in the pre-taped show, you have to prepare everything you're going to say and then just kind of go from there. Here again, you guys pick the topics and I kind of go with it. But let's talk a little bit about Pro Day, and if we have to double back to Pro Day for people who missed, that's fine too. Again, I mean, what else are we going to talk about? So let me move this down. Let me move this over. My desktop is a mess with windows and things like that in order to do the show, and I have a screenshot taken here. We'll put your comment in the queue, Ryan. All right, Ohio State Pro Day. Ohio State sent 7 players to the NFL Scouting Combine. Guys like Garrett Wilson, guys like Chris Olave, stood pat. They were there at Ohio State's Pro Day to run routes, and that's it. There's no reason to run the 40. There's no reason to bench. There's no reason to do any of that. Now, for players like, I don't know, like Master Teague, who didn't get to go to the Combine, was not invited to the Combine. It meant everything. And, he really was impressive. I mean, he came in just a tick shy of 6 foot, 221. He ran a 40 in the high 4.4s. I mean, I don't know if there really was a consensus there. The university doesn't release the data per se. So a lot of hand timing. You talk to the athletes afterwards. You talk to whoever you talk to in the NFL, and you get an idea. But it wasn't really a consensus. I've heard as low as 4.44. I've heard as high as 4.49. I would probably put it somewhere in the middle as still an unofficial hand time. Let's not forget, Chris Olave ran a sub 4.3 hand timed, and then they came in and they adjusted that. Sticking with Teague, 36-inch vertical, 10'11" broad jump, put up 27 reps at 225. Very impressive. Now, does Master Teague work his way onto draft boards? Do teams sit there and say, I don't think anybody's unaware of players coming out of Ohio State. That's never the case of, well, we just didn't know who this dude was. Who is he? I mean, that's not the case. But do teams sit there and take a second look, take a third look? Can he work his way in? Is he a 6? Is he a 7? I mean, does he get in? I mean, he certainly is somebody who could get in as an undrafted free agent. And sometimes the way that the draft works, a lot of times it's better to be undrafted than to be like a low 7. Just because you and your agent can kind of look at what the offers are out there and you can kind of pick a situation that might work better. I mean, if you sit there and you get drafted by a team that is deep, deep, deep in returning running backs and has drafted a running back or two, and you're there, I mean, you're not going to probably be in that camp for long. So, and I'm excited for Master Teague. I think he is a great kid. He certainly played his role at Ohio State. Yes, he never really was able to quite show that 4.45 speed. He was never really able to break away on a lot of these runs that you thought maybe would be, okay, this is the one he's going to house, and just a shoelace away, and would be, would be taken down. But pretty much everybody else did a various amount of works. I mean, Haskell Garrett didn't run again. MPF didn't run again. Jeremy Ruckert, he didn't run, but remember Jeremy Ruckert got hurt in the Senior Bowl, so he's kind of been dealing with some dings. But all of that aside, and I'm going to close that window for now. Let's talk about what everybody wants to talk about, and that is the receiver drills with CJ Stroud out there throwing. And apologies to Cardale Jones, who looked very good. Looks like he could just walk into a camp at any point. I mean, he can still throw the rock. He's doing God's work, though. He's on that foundation, dealing with the Schottenstein Foundation for NIL. Yeah, I'd love to see Cardale get another crack at. Put him in the USFL. Let him have a crack there. I love the kid. Would love to see. Would love to see that, but for as impressive as anybody was, I think the most long-lasting impression would be what CJ Stroud was able to do. And I know everybody's going to be like, well, they didn't televise it, so I didn't get to see it. So, I mean, yes, you're talking a lot of second-hand, third-hand there, but from all the throws that CJ was able to make there, it was, I mean, a lot of people were there to see CJ Stroud. If you're not in the market for a receiver, or you don't have a first round pick or whatever, you're there watching CJ Stroud. I mean, yes, obviously there are other players to watch, and I mean, no offense to Haskell Garrett, or to Tyreek Smith, or Jeremy Ruckert, or anybody. I mean, seeing CJ Stroud, this is an opportunity, because this is a point to where you could have GMs, head coaches in at points where normally, it's going to be scouts and guys like that are going to be in, to see what he is right now, getting ready to go into his second season as a starter at Ohio State, third season at Ohio State. And you kind of get a point to where then you'll be able to see where he's grown over the course of that year. But, I guarantee you that if CJ Stroud were draft eligible, there are a lot of teams out there that would be very interested in giving him a run. And let's not forget, we are not that far removed from people saying Ohio State made the wrong choice. They made the wrong choice. They're starting the wrong guy. And that's not an indictment on anybody else in the program. I think that Kyle McCord has a very good chance in 23 of being the guy. I mean, Devin Brown would like to say something about that, but I think Kyle McCord has a very good chance there. But there's just something about CJ Stroud and what he's able to do. And I mean, he just was in position, and yes, I have two eyes like anybody else. And I saw some of the yips that he was dealing with as a starter in those first couple of games. He was throwing high at points. He was short hopping a couple points. He wasn't really getting his feet set. I mean, he just had this nervous energy about him. And he doesn't play for the Akron game to rest his shoulder, which really leads you to believe that, it was bothering him. And as somebody who's had shoulder injuries their entire life, I was about to say career, but my career was very short in terms of athletics. Somebody's dealt with shoulder injuries their whole life. It's awful. It is awful, and he was a trooper to gut through it. I think in some ways he probably couldn't. You're given the brass ring, and you don't want to. You don't want to give up the. You don't want to give up the reins at that point. Well, I've got it, and I don't want to get Wally pipped. I'm hurting, but I'll fight through it. I'll figure it out. We'll just go with it, and hopefully it all works out. Because if I give up the position, and certainly if I give up the position way too willingly, I can't go. Then questions about work ethic and toughness and all of that come in, and then you can potentially end up at the back of the line, and then you end up in the portal, and then that's that. So, credit to the kid for gutting through it. They finally, all right, you're not playing against Akron, and he comes out and he lights it up. He lights it up. Yes, we can sit there and say, where was that against Michigan? Well, there were a lot of issues against Michigan. Not every game was as smooth as some other games, but I think that what we saw against Utah should be an indication of what life after Wilson and Olave will look like. And I'm going to get to where goes one's question about the Heisman here in a second, I promise. Let me throw that one in the queue. Let me close my email too. That beeping is driving me crazy. Utah's secondary was grossly depleted. They had a running back out there playing corner. So there were probably some throws that were successful because Utah was not defending it. And then there were some throws I saw in that game that I don't care who you put out there. They were uncoverable throws. The throw was on the money. Dropped right in the basket, dropped in spots where no defensive back would ever be able to get to. Things that C.J. Stroud was able to do in that game. I don't care who Utah had out there. I don't care if they had 10 Clark Phillipses. I don't care if they had 10 all-pro NFL DBs. Nobody was going to defend those passes. Now, you can go round and round and say, well, he got confidence going off against a depleted secondary or whatever. I challenge anybody to go out there and make some of those throws. There are very few people on this earth that can make those types of throws. And CJ Stroud happens to be one of them. So it is special. Now, to where go one's question, what percentage do I give CJ to win the Heisman? That's tough because there's so much sight unseen. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, those are the known properties. There are some other known properties that we can sit there and say they're going to be very much in the mix. One or two of those guys generally end up fading out for one reason or another. We sit there, look at Wake Forest quarterback. We thought, he was going to be there. Well, he really wasn't there. Let me jump onto the super chat. Thank you, Jordan. I'll get to it here in a second. If you sit there and you look at the Alabama roster and you look at the Ohio State roster and you look at everything there, I really like CJ Stroud's chances better to win it this year than Bryce Young's to repeat. And now we always get to this thing. We get an underclassman who has another year to come back and they win the Heisman. It's like, oh my God, is Archie's record in jeopardy of, being the only two-time Heisman? And yeah, that's a valid conversation to have. We like to talk about that. But with that being said, he doesn't have Jamison Williams. John Mechie's gone as well. They're gonna bring in more talent. They've gone to the portal. They got the kid from UGA. They're not going to be devoid of talent. But I just think that CJ Stroud feeling snubbed, CJ Stroud having to sit on that stage and listen to Desmond Howard pop off on him, CJ Stroud, based on everything, I think he's just going to want it more. And I think that Ohio State's going to do everything it can to put CJ Stroud in those positions. Now, that doesn't mean let him play full games. Do not end up at the end of this season with a quarterback, and whether it be Devin Brown or Kyle McCord, that has 50 career attempts. It worked out okay in terms of the rise of CJ Stroud, but don't be that guy. I think that they're going to have to play both of these guys. Certainly in terms of portal management and everything. And again, Both of these young quarterbacks know. They know CJ Stroud's not coming back in 23. So the job is open. So why leave at this point? I mean, now if you lose, I guess there's the concern there. And then holy shnikes, you're in really bad situation because they're not at 4 scholarship quarterbacks. They're at 3. So that's kind of an issue. But let me jump on Jordan's super chat because that's the rules. You know it. You super chat, you move to the head of the line. In my expert opinion, Ohio State did start the wrong guy quarterback. They should have went with Tony Gerdeman. Womp womp. He's out of eligibility. I can assure you of that. If we were doing a scoop football team, I'd probably put Ross Fulton at quarterback. I just tend to think that would be the right call. I would probably play left tackle. Gerd would play right tackle. Tom Orr would probably be running back. I'd put Alex Gleitman at one receiver, at inside receiver, and I'd put Mark Givler at outside receiver. So there you go. So no, I don't think that I would have Tony Gerdeman quarterbacking anything except our excellent Ohio State coverage, and that he can quarterback, and Michigan Mondays, and being the butt of all Scoop Eats jokes. So there you go, Jordan. You got that much there. Let me jump in through a couple of comments. I wish we had the same passion for basketball that we do football. Maybe we could be elite in basketball too. Go Bucks, and that team up north sucks. And I do want to talk about basketball here in a couple minutes, but we'll get in here and talk about it here for a second, Sean. There are very few schools that can support both. Florida was able to do it for a little bit to where they were able to support both football and basketball, but you're either a football school or you're a basketball school largely, and there's some schools that want to be one and are kind of relegated to being the other. I hear all this thing about Ohio State has limitless resources for this, that, and the other. They should have this, they should have that. Well, first of all, there's no such thing as limitless resources. Now, Ohio State does have a printing press in terms of its athletic budgets and things that are there. But you got to remember, Ohio State has an athletic department that's, 35, 36 Division I teams. And most of them are not built to be profitable. They're just not going to be profitable. And, they're not dealing with full scholarships. I mean, you may have a sport that has like 4 scholarships combined and people are getting thirds and quarters and halves of scholarships to try and make things work. But football pays the bills, and basketball generally is going to be in the black as well. But football's got to pay the bills. So with basketball, I think there would be a lot more excitement if they would have redone St. John Arena. There, I said it. Value City Arena, great concert hall. Please pass the ketchup. I mean, I don't have anything else I can say about Value City Arena. It is not a good basketball arena. And then when you sit there and you do the personal seat licenses and you have the donors down low, and to the credit of Ohio State, years ago they did make some adjustments to get some more students down behind the benches. But it's just, you're not in a place that is acoustically favorable to the home team. You are not in... I'm marking down some questions I want to get to. You're not, it's just a bad vibe. It's not a great vibe. And then TV doesn't do any favors when, it's a Tuesday 9 p.m. game. Well, all right, maybe a student can go to it. Maybe not. I mean, I wasn't very serious about my studies, but so maybe I wasn't. I would have been there with bells on, but if I'm that young family and I've got like a 6-year-old kid who wants to sit there and loves basketball, I'm passing over that Tuesday 9 p.m. game. So you're just dealing with a place that doesn't have oomph. It doesn't have juice in terms of the arena. So you lose a little bit there. You have some kids that want to go somewhere. Winning is important. I think being BMOC, big man on campus, is a big thing. There's very few basketball players that are going to be able to wrestle that away from football. And Ohio State's a plenty big campus. I mean, you can have plenty of big men on campus. But barring, being Greg Oden was one thing, being Jared Sullinger, being D'Angelo Russell, there are going to be a lot of guys that are just like, all things being equal, I could still play in the Big Ten at Indiana. I could still play in the Big Ten at Michigan State. And, Michigan State's had some runs at football, but, Indiana, be happy to be at 500. I mean, I like their coach. I think that, I think they're doing some things well, but I don't see them on an upturn at the moment. It's a lot easier to sit there and go to that type of situation. You're playing against the same competition. A lot of it matters in terms of who your coach is or whatever. I mean, Mike Woodson, I think was a pretty good hire at Indiana. I was really skeptical. We'll see how well that one plays out. We'll see what happens at Michigan State. You got to figure that Tom Izzo's getting toward the end of his career. He's now the all-time Big Ten wins leader, taking that title from Bobby Knight. I don't know. I don't see an easy path for Ohio State being that top program in both sports. And I mean, yes, we could just sit there and say, well, it should be. That's what it should be. I mean, that just should happen. I mean, we should just will it into existence. Well, you just can't will it into existence. I mean, it takes a lot of things, and a lot of things are out of your control. You can sit there and change the building. You could sit there and do this and that. You can't make the kids go. Now, with NIL, I guess maybe you can make the kids go a little bit more in terms of how lucrative of NIL deals you have out there and how well that works. So, once again, another plug to the foundation. Let's see how all of that works out. But, it takes some doing. And then it takes even more work to maintain it. I mean, certainly Ohio State had that stretch under Thad Matta where it was a perennial second week team. It was going to get to the Elite Eight, to the Final Four, to the semifinal game, and then still couldn't get over. I mean, Big Ten can't win a national championship. The Big Ten is built to be the best league in terms of beating the hell out of each other and maybe getting a win or two in the NCAA tournament. But these teams just get destroyed with the physical level of play within the conference. And, again, there's just a laundry list of things I think you need to kind of look at in terms of what would make Ohio State successful, what would make the Big Ten successful. And a lot of those questions, I don't know if I can answer. I don't know if I have the answer on all of that. Sean with a follow-up here. Ohio State's too powerful a school not to be able to develop, recruit elite talent at basketball and develop them for success. We underachieve consistently, in my opinion. Great job, by the way. Well, Sean, I appreciate the kind words there. The thing is you're also dealing with a situation of where it's almost a little bit of a lottery in terms of how you evaluate players. You sit there and you're like, okay, this is going to be the guy. And then there was so much of the knock on Thad Matta toward the end was he's not doing this with Ohio kids, and then Ohio State is getting beat by Ohio kids. Not having a Nigel Hayes who goes to Wisconsin. That was a big hit. Iowa coming into the state. Michigan State being able to come into Ohio. I mean, you have to kind of hit on the right kids. And, and I think also where we're having the point in time that we're having this discussion, we're talking about an Ohio State team that dealt with a lot of injuries. And, Noon, stop. Everybody's got to deal with injuries. Shut up. It's, fine. Hear me out, though. No Seth Towns the entire year. 2 games of Justice Suing. Zed Key played, but he didn't look like he was confident in himself. And then God bless Kyle Young. God bless that kid. He was out there playing his you-know-what off, and he ends up getting popped again and ends up having to leave the game. And while Ohio State did claw back a little bit more after Kyle Young was gone, don't tell me for a second that this team wouldn't have had a little bit more of a sustained run if it had Kyle Young. So, Michi Johnson never was really right toward the end of the season. You're just dealing with a thing of where you have 2 alpha first-round type of players in E.J. Liddell and Malachi Branham. Absolutely. You should be able to win with those 2 types of players. Yes. If you have a third guy. If you have a third guy that can just kind of take some of it off of them. and it was Kyle Young for a good amount of time. I will fight until the end and say that if they had Justice Suing this season, they had Justice Suing, and he didn't make any gains. He was just the same player he was last year. This team wins 3 or 4 more games, is not playing as a 7, is not playing Villanova in round 2, and probably has an easier time of things. Now, does that mean that I'm saying that they get to the Sweet 16? I don't know. Does that mean I think they win a Sweet 16 game? I don't know. It's all about matchups. It's all about draws. It's, there's a lot going on there. Ohio State, rightly or wrongly, thought Dwayne Washington was going to be back for this season. Well, that didn't happen. So suddenly, everybody moves up a slot. Suddenly, Jamari Wheeler is responsible for a lot more scoring and a lot less distribution than what maybe the thought was going to be. So, some of that you have to put on the coaches. You have to put on the coaches in terms of you need to construct a team that is going to be able to endure the bumps and bruises and everything else, because there were a lot of players out there on the court when I was in Pittsburgh that were not necessarily huge scoring threats. And when you're able to take 4 to guard 2 and have one who just kind of floats around and you're just like, well, we'll let X, Y, and Z have their shots. They're not going to beat us. And, everybody's collapsing on E.J. Liddell, and E.J. Liddell's not able to do what E.J. Liddell's able to do. Malachi Branham, certainly came on as the game went on. It's difficult. So I don't know. I mean, I do agree that they should be able to recruit elite basketball talent, but Ohio State, aside from being this huge athletic monstrosity that it is a football school. It is a football school, and there's just going to be some kids that's just not going to be there. And again, I'm not even necessarily going to get into this, because then it's like, well, Kevin, I want you to show your work. Where is this coming from? Ohio State has not been one to get into the mud and the weeds in terms of recruiting some kids. Or at least in terms of having success in landing them. And read into that as you will. Read into all of that as you will of what I'm talking about there. But there's just going to be some kids that just aren't going to be interested there. Now, what does NIL mean? We will see. We will see. I mean, certainly for those of you in Columbus, you probably have seen Zed Key's commercial with Chess Roan. There's some basketball NIL money out there. But, we have so much focus on football, but NIL is there for all athletes. And I think Ohio State really needs to have a really good approach, a real good attack there for what they're going to do for guys like that. Now, this kind of leads me into another point. Again, I guess we're having our basketball conversation now. We're about half hour in. I want to thank everybody. I know it was kind of a late call on a Friday lunchtime show. Numbers are not exactly where they normally would be, but that's fine. You guys are there. That's all I care about. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the thumbs up so you never miss a show. If you're listening to the audio version of this later, be sure to leave us a 5-star review so everybody can find us. That really helps us with our distribution. Means a lot to me. What to make of Malachi Branham? Malachi Branham absolutely is going to declare for the draft. Absolutely. But so did Caleb West, and so did other players. The question is, does he stay in the draft? I've seen him mocked in the top 20. I've seen him mocked above E.J. Liddell. And once again, I kind of go into a Mike Conley Jr. situation of where, oh, we got a kid that's really good. Just wait till year 2. Might not be able to keep him at that point. Kid comes into school, probably every intention of sticking around for more than a year. And then he gets better. And he gets better. And the publicity gets better. And the publicity gets better. And he keeps moving up. And he keeps moving up. Well, you sit there and you look at these mocks, which again, I could write a mock draft. I mean, that's not necessarily, you don't have to be certified by the NBA to do this. You're not polling front offices to get information. It's just what your belief is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's going to go and likely do the NBA camps, and they're going to pick his game apart. You're good at this. You're bad at this. You need to do this. Now, could Malachi Branham come back for a year, get taken care of by NIL, and be a lottery pick in the next draft? Absolutely. Absolutely. But when somebody's saying you're still going to be a 1 this year, and if there's any validity to that, you're going to be a 1 to that. It might be hard to pass that up to where you're able to sit there and say, okay, well, basketball now is my full-time job. I don't have academics. I don't have any of this other stuff to worry about. Not to say that somebody like Malachi couldn't come back and use the degree completion programs that Ohio State has in place, but go and start earning now. And, if Ohio State doesn't have Malachi Branham, that's a big problem. Ohio State has a fantastic recruiting class coming in. Now, is Bruce Thornton somebody that's going to be able to carry the water alone, or Bryce Sensabaugh, or Felix Saxpara, or whoever? I don't know. Then again, the thing is that I don't think any of us sat there and looked at Malachi Branham and said, he's going to lead the team in scoring more often than not. I mean, he's going to put up 20-plus points in NCAA games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's easy for me to sit there and say, temper your expectations on the young guns. But, what we've seen guys come in and just blow it up. So, and I'm putting a lot of questions in the queue, so I'm not ignoring you guys. We're just finishing this thought right now. What Ohio State needs to do a better job of, we live in a portal era. Ohio State has to do a better job in the portal. Ohio State has to find the guys. And again, it's not as easy as just saying, I will this into existence and boom, it happens. That's not how it works. It doesn't just, I just want this to happen. I want to be a billionaire. Well, my bank statement says I'm not. So here we go. We're going to keep talking. You can't will stuff into existence. So, you have to go out and find the guy. And, I think Ohio State's kind of had some mixed successes. I mean, certainly they've had good minutes from Justice Suing, and then he's been hurt. Unfortunately, Seth Towns has not necessarily worked out. I mean, they've had some good minutes, but they've been fleeting. You sit there, you look at somebody like Keyshawn Woods. I mean, he certainly was able to provide some things, but, they need to be able to go out there and get the guy that comes in and, God willing, that you're able to get the 14-7 that you think you're getting. For one reason or another, Cedric Russell never got comfortable this year. He just never got comfortable. He had hot moments of where he was able to put up points in bunches. He had moments to where he was a little bit of a defensive liability out there. He had moments to where he looked like, he didn't have the confidence, and instead of taking shots that were there, he just would pass the ball off. And again, I'm speaking in honesty there. I mean, I like Cedric. I mean, I only had the chance to talk to him 3 times. Really like the kid. He's from Louisiana. My wife's from Louisiana, so we were able to talk about crawfish and things like that. So, I mean, we had a connection there. But, honestly, they did not get the Louisiana production. Granted, Cedric Russell came up here and they weren't playing in the Atlantic Sun. They weren't playing against that type of competition. Stuff got to be much more real, much more difficult at that point, and it doesn't always work. So, Ohio State, may sit there and look at guys from some of these mid-major programs, but they better be the ballers. They better be the big guys. You can't bring in a guy that's 6.7 and 4.2 in limited minutes and hope that that's going to work. I mean, yes, you need to find the pieces that are going to fit the jigsaw puzzle. Where are we deficient? What do we need? It was brutally honest that guard play means everything in the NCAA tournament, and our guard play was not quite up to snuff. So yes, you need guard play, but that doesn't necessarily mean you could put warm bodies in there and be like, well, now we're good. Now we got guard play. You better be scoring. And if you don't have Malachi Branham, it's been a minute since they've had somebody who's had a mid-range like Malachi. And, I've seen this team get to a point of where it falls in love with, it's either the 3 or taking it to the rack, and there's nothing in between. And if the 3 isn't happening, if the 3 isn't falling, and then teams pack it in, that's when you end up with 48 points from Ohio State. So there'll be a lot to talk about moving forward. We'll double back maybe to get to a little bit of just what I saw at the tournament. I'm going to get to some of your questions, though. And touch that one right there. It's just me, Tim. I'm making pot roast today. Jealous. I am a little bit. I've got a couple of roasts down in the trunk freezer. Probably make one next week. It's supposed to get really cold here in Columbus, maybe even a little bit of snow on Saturday, so I'm not going to screw around with the smoker over the weekend, but maybe next weekend. We'll have to see what's going on, but I love pot roast. Do you do a Mississippi pot roast? How do you do it? Are you a crock pot guy? Do you use banana peppers, like the soup mix? How do you do yours? The one I do in my smoker, I've done them multiple ways, but I do one that's kind of like a mixture of like canned soups and some other stuff. Really good. If you bug me one day, I'll try and post the recipe I use there. Ryan, if they didn't sink so much money into other sports, maybe they could take away from other people of one sport. Ohio State takes great pride in having the largest athletic department in the country and having the most sponsored sports. You're not going to see Ohio State, pull opportunities away from student athletes. That's just not going to happen. If with a $50 million shortfall due to COVID and everything else, they didn't take any sports away then, they're not going to take any sports away now just to try and create some sort of competitive balance. Because the reality is basketball is going to have money. It's going to have money. You have to get the kids to come to Ohio State. I mean, that's the thing. The money needs to come out of NIL. And that's not, the university isn't paying that money. Advertisers, companies are paying that money. This NIL collective is going to be paying that money. And I don't see them just saying, well, we're going to give up on the shot. We're going to just build we're going to put $200 million into St. John Arena to fix it. Because honestly, they could do whatever to St. John Arena. You have the Covelli Center. You've got other venues for a lot of events that might be quote unquote homeless if St. John Arena is taken off the plate for a year or 2 or 3 of renovations. But for anybody that's had an opportunity to see that one-off game that Ohio State does at St. John Arena each year for men's basketball, it is so much better in terms of the environment. Now, that building is beat to hell. It's just old. I mean, it's just showing its age. Who isn't? That's where I went to see games when I was an undergrad at Ohio State. But it could be so much better. I mean, it's so frustrating to talk about it. And look, I don't have to balance a budget. I don't have to keep the trains running. I don't have to count the beans. Any of the comments that you want to put out there, I don't have to do any of that. That's not what I'm responsible for. So it's really easy for me to talk about all of that and say, well, you should just do this, 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 and this. I don't know what it necessarily takes to make it happen, but what I do know is not happening is the shot is not a great basketball venue. So there you go. Getting back to our pot roast, first try on the pot roast, beef stock on stove. It's a big piece of meat. It can take a lot of salt. One of the worst things that I've done with an early pot roast is I didn't have enough salt in there, and it was super bland. So, just kind of be aware of that. But, the way I like to do it is I sear it off. I salt, pepper, garlic, sear off the sides and the edges. I get all of that, and then it either goes into a crock pot or goes into the smoker. But before I get accused of talking too much about food, and I am hungry, so I'm having lunch after this. Let me clear this one. Taco Mac in Chattanooga, come hang out. I know some Buckeye fans down here as well. We'll hang out with you, including me. I bet Von Bell can't get it set up for you. That's where him and I live. I bring moon pies. Bring moon pies because I do like that. Funny story. I don't know if Mark Gibler is watching today. I'm sure he's probably got better things to do. We stayed in Chattanooga getting ready to go see Von Bell when he was still in high school. I don't like motor inns. I like my hotels to have doors inside of indoor halls. I don't like my door overlooking the parking lot. I just don't feel great about that. A little bit of a hotel snob. Marriott's, Hilton's, and their brands are generally where I like to stay. We get a Hampton Inn. Oh, Hampton Inn, we're going to be totally fine. We pull up. Damn thing's a motor inn. I've never seen a motor inn Hampton Inn before. So I ended up like talking, and there were a couple of rooms that faced the pool instead. I'm like, really, please. I'm titanium status. Can you please move us to something that doesn't overlook the road? My thinking is somebody coming from the pool is going to be a lot less likely to try and rob me and my thousands of dollars of equipment in the room than somebody coming in from the parking lot to make a quick getaway. Needless to say, we were fine, but that's one of my memories of Chattanooga, is that I love moon pies. I've never been to Lookout Mountain. That's about all I can tell you about Chattanooga. But Southern Swing, if there's a reason to come through there, we'll make this happen. I could do multiple Taco Mac stops on a trip. I can assure you of that. Let me clear that one. We got that one already. Adam, is Notre Dame a night game? OSU favored by ? Over Notre Dame. Time hasn't been set. Line hasn't been set. But I didn't think you were asking for official statements there. You were asking me what my thoughts are. Notre Dame will probably be a night game. It won't be big noon because this is probably going to be an ABC, ESPN game. For all the talk about the ABC, ESPN contract, it's not up yet. So whatever we talk about in terms of television contracts moving down the line, immaterial. It's still Fox owns one half of the deal. ABC, ESPN owns the other half of the deal. We all were concerned that the Joe Buck trade going from Fox to ESPN and netting a game for Fox might have meant that game. It doesn't appear that's the case. So you would think that ABC, with its first choice, would take Ohio State Notre Dame and would probably move it to the night slot. So I'm going to say night game for now. Ohio State probably favored by Notre Dame. Notre Dame's breaking in a new quarterback. Notre Dame does return some guys. I do respect Notre Dame. I'm not a Notre Dame fan by any stretch of the imagination, but you real recognizes real. I mean, they're going to have some guys, but they're not going to be Ohio State. Question being, what's Ohio State's defense going to look like in game one? Are we going to see some new faces and new places or whatever? I don't know, 5.5. It's so early. I don't know. I mean, you get me within the season, and I can get within a couple points of nailing a lot of lines of saying it's going to be this, it's going to be this. It doesn't mean that that's what the final score is. If that was the case, I would be in Vegas as a sports gambler, and I would still probably do a podcast for the hell of it. But I certainly wouldn't. It wouldn't be a source of income. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me jump back to the regular comments instead of the taped ones. We'll just check here. Absolutely, Joseph. I enjoy doing the show. It's a lot of fun. Here's the thing. I sit there and I want to do such a great job for y'all that I worry. I'm like, oh, what if I don't have anything to talk about? What if I'm really boring? What if nobody shows up? And then I get on and then I enjoy doing the show. And then, we blow through the hour and we're like at an hour and a half. I don't know if I can go that long today. But, I really enjoy the show. I really enjoy the live show. I really enjoy the interaction. And again, there's going to be a point where I'm going to start bringing guests back on. We're not quite at that point. Get a little further down the line and I'll start having guests on. That's going to take some of the pressure off of me filling all the time myself. But I really do enjoy this. This is a great opportunity because it's so much more immediate. I could talk to you on the message board, and please, if you're not a member, be sure to follow me over at Buckeye Scoop. Be sure to check out all the happenings there. Good stuff. But we can have a back and forth. How quickly you're able, wherever you can, go back and forth. I mean, it's just a lot better. However quickly you can type your response to me, and if I see it, problem is sometimes when I'm running a one-man band, I'm trying to formulate thoughts and screen questions. To this point, I haven't put any bad questions up That's not a challenge. Please don't do that, because I don't want to get in trouble. But Josh, what's all in your head? Yeah, well, it's a giant head, so there's a lot of room there for me to have my own insecurities and everything there. Adam, hoping for a night game here. Now, here's a thought on night games. I don't get as wound up about night games as fans do, but we approach this very differently. A fan wakes up, cracks open that morning beer, Bloody Mary maybe, some eggs, some toast, goes through the day, anticipation for the game and everything. We got a super chat coming in. I'm going to throw that up here right now. I wake up. I know I got to be at the stadium 3 hours before. I got a pregame show to do. I've got some other work to do, cover the game, postgame show, generally tape a morning scoop with Tom Orr. It's a long day. Now, a night game means if it's a 7 o'clock game, pregame's at like 4:30. The game's over by 10:30, maybe even closer to 11. I'm not rolling out of there until 2:30, 3 in the morning, maybe later. Even worse on the road. It's even worse because then you have to drive somewhere, whether it be your hotel. I mean, some places you're within 10 minutes. Penn State, I stay about 75 minutes out of State College out of necessity. So I get it. I get it that fans like night games. All day to drink, all day to S-talk, all of that's there. Night games are a little rough for me. People are like, what is your favorite window? I really like 12 o'clock games. I really do. And it's not because it's the big Me Kickoff. I mean, it's just easier for me to get through it, get through my day, and be able to see some football at the end of the day. But, it is what it is. Cameron with a super chat. Regardless of draft eligibility, who is the most likely breakout candidate to produce at a first-round level on defense this season? Well, here's the thing. When you look at the draft, it's not just about who makes plays, but who, you got to have an NFL body. You've got to be able to do, there's a lot of things that the NFL looks at. I mean, there are players that are great college players and not so great at the next level. There's some players that don't necessarily excel in college. They do enough and then go to the league and go nuts. So, I think we sit there and we look. You could sit there and say maybe somebody like a JT Tuimoloau, who is getting a full off season of weight training and everything else to be able to come into the season. Not somebody who gets off the plane and then just puts on a uniform and has to go start playing. And then, to that credit, plays a lot and plays at a pretty decent level. You give him this off season, he's able to reshape his body a little bit. Not that he needed a lot of reshaping, and has all of that time. I think somebody like him. I still think Denzel Burke is going to be a first rounder by the time it's all said and done in the secondary. Those would be my first two guesses at this point, just because it's a lot easier to talk about known quantities, people that we've kind of seen. As opposed to, it'd be great for me to sit there and say, well, I think Jordan Hancock. Well, based on what, Noon? Based on what? What have you seen out of Jordan Hancock? What have you seen out of J.K. Johnson to say that they could be a first rounder? I haven't. I haven't seen them do anything yet, really. So I can't go there. I'm not necessarily convinced that there's a first round linebacker that we've seen at this point, and that doesn't mean that Cade Stover can't blow up. That doesn't mean that we can't see more out of Steel Chambers, Cody Simon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it takes a lot to be a first rounder. If we're talking about a first rounder, that is creme de la creme, top. There are a lot of Buckeyes that have gone second, third, fourth round that have gone on to remarkable careers. There are only, 32 first-round picks? There are no compensatory picks. We don't add to the first round. We don't do anything. It's a finite number. In 133 Division 1A teams, all the FCS teams, D2, whatever, are all these players come into a funnel or whatever. And yes, a lot of players are never going to sniff the NFL. We get that. But you're still dealing with a lot of guys going in there. And that's why when Ohio State has draft classes with 2, 3, 4, 5 first rounders, it's that remarkable. because it's a fixed number. It's a finite number of 32. And, more spots aren't going to come the way. It's not like, well, it was a tie. We really like 40 guys that I think should have first round designation. It doesn't work that way. If you're not picked in the first round, you're not picked in the first round. So it is what it is. It's just me. Tim loves noon games. I do too. But it is what it is. Again, I have my own reasons. You have your own reasons. Somebody else may have their own reasons. Somebody else may be like, I really like 3:30 games. I like it because I like to be able to sit there and get some yard work done in the morning and play with the kids. Then I have to go down to the man cave and lock the door because I can't be around anybody when I'm watching the game. And then the game's over. Then I have time for late dinner. I mean, all the windows have their pluses and their minuses. I understand people don't like the noon games because it means that you're out there drinking mimosas and bloodies and everything else in the morning. And for people that don't necessarily want to stay in Columbus the night before, it is a real pain in the rear end to get in from Cleveland, Toledo, Marietta, Cincinnati, wherever you're from, to get into Columbus to see a noon game. I get it. I have the fans who are like, well, recruiting. You can't bring in kids from points beyond who are playing on Friday nights to get them in for Saturday. I get that. I understand that, and that is an issue. I think that there needs to be a balance on a schedule. I think it's important for major programs to have a showcase night game. I really do. But I will say that I think sometimes when people say that, it's a little disingenuous. They say that it's all about recruiting when it's really about them. And that's fine. That's fine. It's about you. I do this show for you. It's about you guys. I'm not doing this show for me. I talk plenty every day. And, if all the games were 3:30 and 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, we'd make do. Credentials say be there when the game is. So that's what you do. So, you kind of go from there. We're at 51 minutes. Let me kind of get back to some of the questions. Ryan Dawes, will we see 2 Buckeyes in New York? I'm assuming for the Heismans when that question came in. It's kind of a big ask because remember, it's predicated by your top 3, 4, 5 vote getters. Do Ohio State, if 2 players from Ohio State are there, do they kind of cancel each other out? I mean, because again, the vote, you get to vote for a 1, a 2, and a 3. Now, you vote for CJ Stroud 1 and Jackson Smith-Njigba 2 or Trevion Henderson 2 or whatever. You're not worrying about canceling out your vote. But is there going to be a voter out there that's going to be like, well, I voted Stroud 1 or I voted Stroud 2, and I'm really close on the other one, but I've already voted for an Ohio State player, so let me take this guy from another school. I think you run the risk of that. So, I don't know. I'm going to say no because I'm playing the odds. It's much more unlikely that there are 2 Ohio State players in New York than there are 2 players there. I think that if we see what I'm expecting out of this year, it could be warranted. It could very much be warranted, but statistically, it's more unlikely. So I'm going to say no, but I reserve the right to change my mind there. Tony could be the captain of the all catch-up team. Exactly. Hunts, Red Gold, Heinz. There's another brand that I saw like at a steakhouse, which of course just made me cringe seeing ketchup on the table. It's like Captain's Choice or something like that. Ugh. Yeah, that's not a team I want to be a part of. Lorenzo, if CJ passes for 5,000 yards, do you think that that will be his career passing yards? That his career passing yards out of sight for at least 25 years? Well, it's gonna be a lot because here's the issue. You're going to have 2 full seasons in very pass-heavy offenses to be able to get there. So the thing is, we don't know what the game's going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years. I mean, we're in a game that's much more suited for offense. As a defender, you can't do anything. You can't cover. You can't touch. I mean, it's much more suited for the offense. Could we see an overcorrection in 5 years and numbers come down because of it? Which would lend to Lorenzo's point that, I mean, it could stretch it out for a long time. We see records that we think, well, this record's not going to fall, and it falls the next year. And then we see records that we're like, well, that seems pretty pedestrian, and it lasts for 30 years. I think it could be. I mean, I think it could be because I think we could get into a cycle of where Ohio State has some 1-year starters. And that's good and bad. I mean, it's bad if it's a good starter and you want to have him back. It's good if it helps you keep the churn going and you can at least keep the quarterback room moving and you can have guys in there and you don't get portaled out. Yeah, I think so. I think so that if he throws for 5,000, make it 5,500. Let's just put a little more space in there. Make it 5,500, and I think that's going to be out of sight for a while. But who knows? Who knows what the game's going to look like in 5 years? So I reserve the right to change my mind on that one too. Let me clear off a couple of questions here. Let's get to the live action here. Frank asking who's Ohio State's backup quarterback. I would assume Kyle McCord with Devin Brown third, but they're going to have a competition. We haven't gotten to the spring game yet. We haven't had summer. We haven't had fall. That's just based on Kyle McCord was here last year. Kyle McCord was the 2 last year. Devin Brown is here for winter, spring, so he's going to get a full off season. Devin Brown's a really talented kid. But again, playing the odds, it's probably going to be Kyle McCord. Sean saying he lives in Baton Rouge. There are plenty of Buckeyes in LSU territory. Love that the ladies beat those Tigers. One of my really good friends runs an LSU site down there, and he was there. And he was talking a little smack prior to the game. And then about midway through the third quarter, he's like, yeah, LSU has no answer for your girls. This is not good. So I got a couple laughs out of that. My wife's family's out from Lake Charles, so I do spend some time in Louisiana, but not that side of the state. I'm generally out in the heel of the boot. Odysseus 2002, 4 o'clock or 3:30 is the best time. I'm not opposed to that. That allows me to at least wake up, have breakfast, like a sit-down breakfast at home, and kind of relax. I don't get a lot of TV watching of games with that, but I can live with it. Again, first world problems. Oh no, what time am I going to cover the game at? What time am I going to be paid to go watch Ohio State football at? I understand, oh, you're breaking my heart, Noon. You're breaking my heart. I get it. Let's see what else we got. Greg, glad you're able to make it. Sorry you were late too. Anything you missed out, this will be on the YouTube channel. You can go back and catch the previous 57 minutes. This will be on iTunes, Spreaker, all of the good podcasting platforms for those of you who missed out or catching this later, want to listen again because you're so compelled with all of my great conversation, all of that. It'll be there as we close in on the hour mark. Let's talk a little bit more basketball. And I know that people are like, basketball, this is a football school, which goes back to some earlier points that we made. It is a football school. I'm sorry, it is. But what were your thoughts about the NCAA tournament? Did you think Ohio State would beat Loyola Chicago in round 1? Did you think Ohio State would beat Villanova in round 2? I did pick Ohio State to beat Loyola Chicago. I really did. I thought it was going to be like a 5-point type of game. I thought Ohio State's defense was going to show up. Ryan saying his super chat never showed up. I don't know. I will have to check into that. I'm sorry, Ryan. Be sure to say what your super chat question was. I'll give it a super chat treatment. I did not see Ohio State completely shutting down Loyola the way that it did. How much of that was Loyola had a horrible game, i.e. Ohio State against Oral Roberts the year prior, and how much of that was Ohio State just taking Loyola out of its game? I don't know. I mean, I think that the reinsertion of Zed and Kyle into the lineup was huge. I think it was really huge. I do think, though, that Villanova, and I did pick Ohio State to beat Villanova, and I think I had it by 3. I was like, this is a game that could really go either way. It ended up being a 10-point margin, but you know how that goes. That final score is not always a representation of what's going on. That was about a 6-point game that just kind of got salted at the line. That loss of Kyle Young was just I can't put into words just how how big that loss was. And it wasn't a case of that Kyle Young was just absolutely going out there and going nuts and hitting threes and everything else. I'm going off of the point that I'm going off the point that Kyle Young was just such a difference maker in terms of rebounds and energy. And we talk so much about leadership when it comes to football. Do we talk about it enough in terms of basketball? It's just the 5 players out there on the court. Somebody has to step up and be that leader. The coaches can do all that they can, but they're not on the court. And again, I saw some coaches who pretty much were on the court during the course of the tournament. But you need that guy. And, Malachi Branham's young. He's still a young guy, as talented as he is. EJ's a leader. EJ's proven to be a tremendous leader. But I think that Kyle Young was just so important, and it just gave him that other weapon. So I don't know. Let's see. Sean had the Buckeyes playing Michigan in the Sweet 16. I had airfare booked. To San Antonio. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to stay, how I was going to get back, how I was going to be able to pay for it. But I really thought there was a chance. I did it on that 24-hour hold that American Airlines does. I'm like, okay, well, I got 24 hours. And after the post-game press conferences, I had to sadly cancel that one. Would have been great to see Ohio State and Michigan play in the Sweet 16. I remember 92 in the Elite Eight. I worked at Graves Hall, multiple med buildings, but my main spot was in Graves Hall as security. And we had a little black and white TV that didn't do a really good job of getting any signal. But I was watching the game, and I nearly drop kicked that TV through a window. I was so pissed off. I was so angry. Granted, I was an undergrad. I wasn't writing about the teams. I wasn't having to have any implied neutrality or whatever. That was probably one of... I did not see Ohio State beat Michigan in football as an undergrad. I saw a tie. I never saw them beat them. But that loss in basketball, and I'm much more of a football guy than a basketball guy. Much more. But that loss in basketball was one of my biggest disappointments athletically in college. It really was. It was a bitter pill. It was a bitter, bitter pill to have to swallow. How's it going, Marcus? Glad you could join us here on the show. We're about an hour and 2 in. I may go about 15 more minutes or so. Lunch is calling, so need to figure something out. To see if free throw misses hurt too. Absolutely. Ohio State was generally an okay free throw shooting team, going against the best in college basketball with Villanova. Villanova's going to go down setting a record this year. It's like the best free throw shooting team. So I do remember at least one miss. I think maybe they missed 2. This used to be over the course of the game. Ohio State needed to really play about a half letter grade better than it did to have really been in it. But as you were watching the game and Ohio State's making its furious comeback, and I'm sitting next to a kid who writes for like the Villanova student paper. So I'm talking to him. I mean, as one of the older guys on the beat, I enjoy sharing stories, sharing knowledge, whatever it is I've learned. I don't know if I would call it all knowledge, but, I sat there and I was calling pretty much what was going to happen as it was happening. There was a point where, Villanova had gotten up like 9, and still early kind of in the second half. I said Ohio State has at least one more major run in it. Ohio State started making the run. It was getting close. Ohio State's bringing the ball up the court. I said, here comes somebody to play hero ball. He's going to shoot a 3. I guarantee you that. I'm not sure if he's going to make it. They came down, shot a 3, made it. I think that's when Ohio State got down to 2, got the lead down to 2. And then, I don't know, I think there was a real questionable foul call, and I said, that's it. That's going to take the wind out of their sails, and they never really bounced back. Now, somebody could be like, well, you were just really speaking in generalities there, but the kid was impressed. He's like, you really do know this team. I'm like, well, I've watched them. Let me jump in here. Marcus Pope, who is the fastest player and the strongest player on the team? Well, now that they don't have like Tommy Togiai would have been the strongest. I know he's with Cleveland and he's not been on the team for a minute. The strongest player on the team, we don't get to see weight room numbers, really. I don't know. And fast, they kind of hide all that stuff, too. I like some of the guys in the secondary. I mean, there's just not a Jamison Williams that you can sit there and say this guy is certainly the fastest guy on the team or whatever. You've got to wonder what some of the corners are going to be able to do. Evan Pryor has some speed, but he's got some weight on him. He's not as slight as some of the corners. Emeka Egbuka is really fast, really, really fast. I don't know about some of the new guys. I don't think that they necessarily have like a 4.38 type of receiver that I've seen, like a legitimate, like 4.4, low 4.4 type of guy. Getting back to strength, I mean, they're just, there's some dudes. I mean, they're, I wouldn't, if you told me that Tommy Eichenberg was the strongest player on the team, I wouldn't be shocked. If you told me that JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer was the strongest player on the team, I wouldn't be shocked. But it's just not a case where there is a Tommy Togiai, a Mike Kudla, somebody that you just know. Boren was strong as an ox. I mean, there just were guys that you just knew that were just weight room monsters. And then again, I guess too, you could just sit there and be like, well, what is your definition of strength? What's your benching? What's your deadlifting? What is your measurable there? Because there's just some guys that could still be monsters and just are not, didn't come up in a weight room setting and are, what we call country strong. I don't know. So that's a good question, Marcus. I wish I had a better answer. And it's something I'd be like, well, I could ask, and they won't tell me. I mean, because they're like, well, I mean, they have their things up that inside the ropes, parts of the Woody that we're really not supposed to go into, of where they have times. And I think all those times are a little embellished, but that's just me. So I don't know, but I'll ask around. Yes, Billy Price was strong, and he hated talking about it. So did Tommy. They're all humble about it. Nobody comes out and rips their shirt off. Hulk Hogan sounds like, I'm the strongest. They're like, I don't want to talk about it. Tommy didn't want to. Billy certainly didn't want to talk about it. No, I can't really think of any of them that really kind of want to talk about it. Yeah, Kudla gone too soon. He passed away several years ago. He was a beast. He was a beast. I mean, we've seen some freaks go through this program. The 06 Final Four. I did not go to that Final Four. That was my first year back on the beat. I was on the beat until 99. And then I moved away to Dallas to go work for Fox. And then I moved to Tennessee to work for Rivals headquarters. And then I came back in 06. I was at the first two rounds of that tournament, the games at Rupp against Central Connecticut and Xavier. And then I didn't go any further, partially because I was taking over a new site and we just didn't have the finances to do it. Partially because Ohio State was not necessarily being very helpful for a first-year site in terms of getting credentials, and credentials mean everything. I mean, I'm not going to go to San Antonio or to the Final Four without a credential, so I did not get to go. But I did get to see the Xavier game, which I really feel like, all things considered, I made out in that deal. I got to see the game that I wanted to. And the way that I got into there was I knew the site manager at Kentucky. And he knew I was a stand-up guy. And I was still able to get credentialed. Even though I wasn't on the Ohio State team list, I was still credentialed through there. Oden, we don't know how good Greg Oden would have been. And that's not a oh, he's bad. I mean, what we saw to Greg Oden, him playing one-handed, him having to shoot wrong-handed on free throws, him having to play in the cast, we were robbed. Greg Oden was robbed. We were all robbed of seeing what Greg Oden could have been. And again, Greg Oden was going to be a one-year player, period, end of story. So it's not a, well, if he would have only come back. No. I'm not even going to entertain such silliness. But we were all robbed of seeing what he really could have been. And, there are a lot of people that would have been broken to have all of the opportunity, all of the God-given talents that Oden was given, only to have it taken away, that would not have been able to rebound from that. thankfully, they say that you're not tested by more than you can handle. Well, apparently that some of that holds true with Oden, because kid's a bit of a nerd. I mean, he wants to get into coaching, but I mean, what was his degree in? Accounting or something? I mean, he was somebody who was much happier being over at Target, over at Linux, off of campus, than going to the clubs or anything else like that. And I'm not going to say that Oden was weird and didn't like having fun or whatever, but he was a bit of a strange cat. And I think that in terms of who he is, I'm not saying he didn't go through depression and everything else for having it all fall apart around him, but I think a weaker man would have responded much worse. So hats off to Greg Oden. Hats off to Greg Oden. Let's jump here, Justin. We often hear talk about how defensive schemes need to complement the offense. Philosophically, how might the offense complement the new defensive plan in its first season at OSU? Well, I think that the offense needs to not score too quickly sometimes, just to give the defense a blow. I think that's one way you could do it, because we have an offense at Ohio State that, I mean, what we saw against Utah could score in a play, 2 plays, 3 plays. I think a defense is going to benefit by not being out there 11 minutes a quarter. And that's, we're speaking in giant, best case scenarios. That's not, I mean, if that were the case, we don't play games on paper. We play them on turf and grass. So, I just think I think it's just important that Ohio State's offense moves the ball, because on the other side of talking about scoring too quickly are 3 and outs. And Ohio State's offense is not one that is prone to a lot of 3 and outs. I think that as you're teaching and you're putting some new faces in new places and things like that, the worst thing that can happen is you're off the field for 90 seconds of game time, a couple minutes of real time, and you're having to drag your butt back out there again. I think it's going to be very important for Ohio State to keep the chains moving. If Ohio State scores too quickly, so be it. That's a good problem to have at the end of the day. But I think that's going to be important. Yeah, that 92 game was to the Fab Five. It was. Yeah. Still not over that one. So glad Michigan went down. Shouldn't have been in the tourney. Well, I thought it was pretty funny that Dave Portnoy of Barstool was crowing about Michigan carrying the Big Ten banner. And yes, Michigan made it further than any other team than Purdue, and then got summarily dumped by Villanova. And I know Michigan led at some points, something Ohio State didn't against Villanova, but I thought at certain points, I mean, during Ohio State's comeback, I think Ohio State looked a little bit better against Villanova than Michigan did. I don't know. And I also took a little bit of joy, too, about Hunter Dickinson popping off, about hearing everybody on all the road gyms saying NIT and how Michigan didn't belong, and now they're there. Well, now they're home. So, okay, whatever. You got an extra couple of days travel out of it, so congratulations to you, Hunter. Marcus doesn't remember Kudla when he played. I'm looking it up because I'm so bad with the years. Kudla was at Ohio State. I'm looking. He was there 02 to 05. He was part of the championship team as a freshman. Do I remember Jim Jackson and Chris Gent? Absolutely. I had classes with Chris Gent. Chris Gent and I had a couple classes together. We're all about the same age. I was at Ohio State 89 to 94 or so. I took the slow route a little bit. So yeah, I certainly remember those guys. I remember going to games at Ohio at St. John Arena. You couldn't get a full student ticket. It was a split student ticket because demand was that high and the building was that small that you either got like A through M or N through Z or whatever. And like most of my friends were in the other cut. So as N through Z, I went solo. I had solo tickets. And because of that, I had tickets 3rd row behind the opposing bench, courtside. And just being able to see Gene Cady, Bobby Knight, some of these coaches going through and watching them coach, was worth the price of admission. I remember that as much as I remember anything of my time going to games as an undergrad. So it was a lot of fun, but I certainly remember those teams. I certainly remember Chris Gent very well. I didn't really have a lot of interactions with Jimmy Jackson. We just didn't have any classes together. I had a lot of classes with football players because I knew some of the classes that they took to pad out their resumes, and I took them too. So, that was a good time. But all right, was getting ready to wind down. Marcus with another question though. I'm gonna, I like answering questions. No cheating. Who was the only quarterback? Who was the only lefty quarterback? It was the mid to late 2000s. Well, it couldn't be too late. Well, I know you're saying the first decade. I don't know, Marcus. You tell us. I pay attention to things, but there's certain things I don't pay attention to. I have an idea, but I'm having a hard time placing it, and I don't want to guess wrong. I have a reputation to hold up here, so why don't you tell us there, because I'm not exactly sure. Do you think any former OSU basketball player will get a chance to coach? Well, Aaron Kraft is going to be a doctor, so negative there. Jimmy Jackson has got a nice life doing the television thing and everything else, so I'm going to say no there. Marcus, I see Steve Belisari. That's who I was going to say. And you're sure you were, Noon. Sure you were, but that's who I was going to say. Dennis Hobson. I guess what's your definition? Coaching youth, coaching high school, coaching college. Kraft and Jackson, no. Aaron Kraft, he still seems to keep turning up like a bad penny at the TBT, but he's in med school. That's his path. That's what he's going to do. And as I said, Jimmy Jackson has got himself a life doing what he's doing with the broadcasting and everything else. I haven't checked in with Dennis in a while. Not that we necessarily talk, but I haven't checked in with what's the latest things going on in his life. I never want to say never. But, the former player that's going to get to coach is Greg Oden. He's already the GA at Ohio State. I think he's going to get into a more significant role, whether it be at Ohio State or somewhere else. Greg Oden wants to get into the coaching, and I think that's cool. I think that, could we see somebody like John Diebler maybe follow Jake into coaching? I don't know, maybe. I think there's some players of that generation that could make that choice. But of the list you have there, two of them are definitely non-starters, in my opinion. Aside from roster differences, how might this defense compare to the first year of Hafley in 2019? That's an unfair comparison. Hafley walked into a loaded room. Jeff Hafley, really good coach, really good scheme, really good guy. He had some dudes. That's not to say 22 doesn't have some guys, but is there a Jeffrey Okuda? You can love Denzel Burke, you can love Cam Brown or whatever, but is there a Jeffrey Okuda? Are there some of those guys there? The answer's, I don't think so. That doesn't mean that this defense can't be really good, but I think, I don't think that we're talking about seeing a 19 reclamation to that level, but I think we could still sit there and see, maybe, the type of level when they brought Ash in. And I did a piece at Buckeye Scoop, and I don't have it handy, and I don't have the numbers of where I looked at the numbers of the year prior and then the year of the big defensive coaching hires. I'll try and find that and post it if I think about it after lunch. The gains they made in 19 were just astronomical, but you look at that roster, and I think a lot of it was predicated too of they were able to maximize the talent that they had, which was already far better than the talent than really anybody else had. I think Ohio State's still plenty talented in 22, and I think they're going to do a good job of maximizing it, but I'm not sure that I'm going to sit there and say that we're looking at as many players with as high of ceilings, if that makes sense. We're getting toward the end here. How Hamasiro, yes, Odin is looking to coach. Yes, he's already on staff. He's GA, but I think he's done with his I think his GA run is coming to an end. So they're going to have to find something. Remember, Ohio State's losing Tony Skinn to Maryland, or has lost Tony Skinn to Maryland. Obviously lost Ryan Peden to Illinois State. Illinois State, I believe, is right. So they're going to have to make some moves. But, is this, do you sit there? You only have the 3 recruiting assistants. Is that a move of where you look at somebody like Odin? Might be a pretty big jump. I mean, I don't have the benefit of knowing what he's like in terms of his role, because the thing is, he's not a coach as a GA. During the tournament, he was not sitting at the bench. That was not what he was able to do. He was sitting kind of like in the stands, more or less. He was not allowed to coach. So I don't know necessarily what his coaching chops are. I would love to be recruited by Greg Oden if I were a big man. I would love that. I think that would be really cool, but I don't know. Greg asking about Teague. We talked about him a little bit earlier in the show, so I'll just kind of go through this quickly. I think he's certainly opened some eyes. I think he's forcing a lot of teams to take some second and third and fourth looks at him. I would expect to hear his name called, but as I said at that point, if you're going to get into the 7th round, you're almost better going undrafted, because then you can kind of pick your place. And I don't know. I hope the best. I don't know if the NFL was legitimately in Teague's cards, but the numbers he put up at Pro Day were pretty darn impressive. But you got to be able to translate that to the field, and unfortunately, that translation wasn't always there. So I don't know. Marcus, are they going to keep Holtman after next year? Ask me in a year. I think they're going to be pretty good. Now, if people are saying, people put these artificial hurdles of he has to win 24 games, either a Big Ten regular season title or tournament title, and make it to the Sweet 16, you're setting a dude up to fail at that point. He's bringing in his best class in his years at Ohio State. I think people should have a little patience and see what that is. Recognize if Malachi Branham is out, that ends up setting this team back a little bit more. But again, it sets up the issue of you have to do a better job in the portal. And I just think Ohio State has been a little subpar in its portal work. So we'll see. Coaching the Sullinger genes, maybe JJ. It's kind of like running for public office and becoming like a public servant. You really have to, if you're going to do it right, you need to be there to serve. And I just don't know. Satch is an all-time great. He's a guy who walks into the room, he gets everybody's attention. Satch Sullinger is that guy, but growing up as the son of a coach, you're either all in or you're like, I want no part of that. So I don't know. All right, there you go. Hobson coaches at, I thought he may have, but again, I'm very careful to speak out of turn because I don't want to read in the comments 20 people saying, no, Noon, you were wrong. I would rather be vague than wrong. We're just going to kind of power through a couple more as we get to the end. I do want to call it a show by 1:30. I've got another live hit to do here in a few minutes. I think Dave misused Teague last year. With the right team, he could have been a good player, 5'11", 230. Well, I think a part of the issue, too, is that they just, what was it that we wanted out of Trevion Henderson last year? He's not playing enough at the beginning of the year. He's playing too much at the end of the year. I think the thing was that just Teague was always a tackle, a tap on the ankle, a shoestring away from breaking some big runs. He just was never able to be that triples and home run hitter. Singles and doubles, sure. I don't know. We'll see. Olave ran a hand time 4.26 at the NFL Scouting Combine that was changed to like a 4.38. It was sub 4.4, but whoever was hand timing was a little slow. And if you've never gone to an event and hand timed, it's not easy. It is not easy. Honestly, they just need to find a way to I think that if the NFL Combine is the event that it's supposed to be, and it's supposed to be 4 days of programming on NFL Network, and hey, we're selling tickets to people to be able to go into the stands and everything else, you can have a laser system that has immediate report on what the time is. I still think scouts would do stuff on their own. I really do. But if you're going to make it this big spectacular, if you're going to make it this huge dog and pony show, put the information out there. We know at the end of the bench press how many bench press reps somebody's done. They announce at the end of the vert how high they've gone. Why do we keep the 40 shrouded in secrecy? I mean, sell a couple more tickets and get a monitor. I've worked camps to where we did laser 40s and we posted times immediately. I mean, granted, you can only do that kind of in one lane. I mean, because it just becomes a lot, laser systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when I was working over at Rivals and at the Rivals big camp, and we did like the fastest player event, we had immediate feedback on the time. So it's not impossible, and it's not cost prohibitive if we were able to do it over there. The NFL certainly can do it. But I don't know. We're down to the last couple here. Sean's taking off. It was great talking to you, Sean. Thanks for being part of the show. Marcus, don't you think that especially short distance should go to a two-back system? Again, only short yardage. Ohio State's run blocking just wasn't really great in those instances, though. I mean, honestly, I wanted to see Ohio State do a little bit more outside stuff anyway. And Teague would, against goal line, Teague didn't play great. It wasn't consistent. So, I don't know. I do think that two-back system is fine. I just think that Teague kind of ran into some brick walls last year. Lave might have ran sub 4.3 if he went a second time. It's not often that you better your first time. I mean, even with going through and having a minute to catch yourself and everything else, yes, you sit there, you've done it the one time, you have an idea of what it's going to be, even though you've run 40s a bajillion times in your life. I don't have the steady numbers, but I would say it's significant amount of the times that guys are equal or slower in their second time. T couldn't find the cutback lanes like Sermon could. Sermon going down hurt us against Bama, absolutely. We will, we certainly hope to. We certainly hope to. That's all I can say to that one. I'd love to do a fan meetup. I certainly would love to do a fan meetup regardless. The issue is, okay, it's on the Saturday. We've got to work the whole Saturday. So it's almost like if there was like a Friday meetup, that would be a lot easier because we're not trying to produce content. But let's talk about it. I promise you we will do at least one more live show before the spring game. And you can hit me on my email at kevin@buckeyegrove.com. I know that's a site ago, but that's the easiest email to get me to. That's the easiest place for me to see it. Would love to be able to see you guys. Hum is saying T has explosiveness, but he kind of lacks twitch. And then last question, barring a super chat from Marcus. I have one last question. A football field is 100 yards long. Why is the speed test 40? Why not 60 or even 75? I don't know I don't know what the genesis of 40 yards being the measurement is. I mean, what is 40 yards in terms of meters or something like that? It's 36.5 meters. So there's no real lock in there either. I don't know. I mean, I think you're more likely to run 40 than you are 60 or 75. And that just, I'm not here for watching offensive linemen run 60 or 75 yards. I really am not. I mean, yeah, as Hardy Jen says, maybe the distance of a punt. I mean, I don't know. The way that was thrown out there, I'm going to take that as fact, and we're going to say that's the fact. But 60 or 75, yeah, Cameron agrees. It's the distance you have to run to cover the average punt. That's where it came from. 2 is a consensus, and I'll make it 3. There we go. Last question. Will downplay this year? Marcus keeps sneaking these in. I need to hit exit before I here another half hour. I don't know. I mean, what does that running back room look like? Do they lose somebody? I mean, they still need to lose like 5 players before the season. So do they lose somebody in the running back room at that point? Trevion's your one. You've got Meatball if he's still there. I mean, which I believe. You've got Marcus Crowley. You've got Evan Pryor. I don't put a lot of benefit in redshirting anymore because generally, if you're redshirting somebody, you're saving a year of eligibility for him for his next team or the team after that. If a guy can play, a guy can play. I mean, there are going to be times where a guy redshirts because there's just not the opportunity. They're just buried on a depth chart, and it doesn't matter how good they are; they're just not going to get there. I would say no. I would say no just based on what they have, but they could surprise me if they have a couple. If they have a couple losses in the running back room and they're thin, then yes. I mean, if they deal with words that I don't want to speak into existence, yes. I mean, but sitting here March 25th. No. But we can review that one at a later date. Before we get to any more questions, though, unless I have any more super chats, I am going to call it a show. We've got 90 minutes. I am Kevin Noon. It is the Big Me Kickoff here on Buckeye Scoop. Catch us on YouTube. If you're not a member or if you don't subscribe on YouTube, subscribe. I guess it's on this side. Subscribe. Hit the bell. That all helps us out. If you're listening to us on the podcasting networks, leave us a 5-star review. We sure would like that. That not only helps me here on the Big Me Kickoff, but that helps us on Gibbs in the Bank. That helps us on Morning Scoop. That helps us on Buckeye Weekly. That helps us on Around the Oval. All of that means a ton. What time will I be on again? You know what? We're going live. We're going live next week. I promise you that. Date to be determined. It will not be on Tuesday because I have a doctor's appointment about my bad elbow. But outside of that, Thursday or Friday, probably, we will go live again next week. Maybe if I start doing these a little bit more regularly, we can get back up to some of our bigger numbers. But until then, I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Have a wonderful Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm if you're in Central Ohio. And we'll talk to you again very soon.